Long time no see in Soccer We Trust YouTube fam. I know Charlie wants to interrupt me right now. And as you hit like and subscribe, which is a really easy way for you to help us keep the lights on over here, i.e. to pay for another yacht for Charlie, maybe off the coast of Greece in the Mediterranean this time, Charlie. And we're getting ready to talk about the return of the top 5 leagues in Europe and our US men's national team players that will be competing in those respective leagues this season. So let's get after it. Yes. What is up, everyone? And welcome to Julian Green's dad's favorite podcast in Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Cream Cheese Conrad alongside Hollywood Heath Pearce and Charlie Wagon Davies. And today we welcome the return of the European football and foosball because it signals the beginning of some new adventures for players in the U.S. men's national team player pool. And once at all different phases. I'm talking some who are locked in starters, some who are trying to become starters, some who are just trying to get on the goddamn roster. So there are a lot of games and players to preview as the Premier League, Ligue 1, and the Bundesliga all get started this weekend. Now, if you had to name one player, Charlie, I'll come to you first, that has the most pressure and the most eyes on him out of everyone in our player pool this weekend, who would it be and why is it Brenden Vasquez? I set him up. Yep. I set him up.
Nice. For me, it's Ricardo Pepi.
Ooh.
He has the most pressure when I'm looking at this group of players with each match because Jesus Ferreira's balling. You have players like you mentioned, Brenden Vasquez, who are doing really, really well in MLS, who are scoring goals. If that continues and he doesn't take his opportunity in Germany and kind of ends up on the bench, not playing, not scoring, then all of a sudden, all of what he was able to do during World Cup qualifying gets forgotten really quick. And that's the at the end of the day, that's what it means to be a striker. That's how it goes. What have you done for me lately? And so for Ricardo Pepi, every match, everyone's going to be tuning in. Everyone's going to be watching, seeing how many minutes he played, how many shots did he have, how many goals or assists. So at the end of the day, I think that's the player who has the most pressure on him in the player pool right now.
Okay, Ricardo Pepi has not, I just want to put this out there for context, has not started any of Augsburg's preseason games. Or maybe he's had one early on, but ever since then, he's been coming off the bench. So that is one of note. And obviously we'll get into him a little bit more as the show continues. Heath, how about you though? Any name that jumps out at you that you're feeling the heat and they got to perform because all eyes are on him?
I mean, it's Ricardo Pepi. As Charlie was talking, I remembered that I was kind of like thinking he brought up Jesus Ferreira, who signed a new deal and is thriving off of that new deal and still has plenty of time in his career to make the next move after that, but is understanding the situation, making the most of the situation of his new deal. And then I think about Ricardo Pepi's situation. Sorry, putting something down. Of when he left. By the way, Jimmy, I know that you were trying to get a Ricardo Pepi, but I got one yesterday while you were busy. So hopefully this is worth some money. But for those of you listening,
I'm doing a Tops giveaway. Everybody, hit me up on Instagram or Twitter to enter to win. But I'm giving away a whole box of Bundesliga cards. But keep going. I wanted a Ricardo Pepi and I didn't get one. Go ahead, Heath.
Ooh.
I got the Ricardo Pepi. I don't know if Charlie's gotten one of those, but I also got this Julian Green. Julian Green. Speaking of Julian Green's dad, who's obviously watching right now. If you want this card, I got a
Julian Green as well.
Nice. Okay. Anyways, so like when Charlie was saying that, I was remembering when Ricardo Pepi was leaving. You remember it started to get a little contentious, and he had a great relationship with FC Dallas. Probably could have gotten a massive DP deal to stay or stick around, but then started to force the hand and said that he wanted to move, told the club he wanted to transfer, and then to see it end with Augsburg, obviously didn't play out the way that you want. He now has a very difficult challenge of trying to right that because as we learned from Steve Cherundolo, the challenges of being in a club like Augsburg. But he has the most pressure for me, for sure, because if he is anything that I think that he could be, he has to find a way to get on the field and score goals. And as Steve mentioned yesterday, for those that didn't listen, go back and watch or listen to that podcast. He talked about like defaulting towards the veterans, when things are not going good. Maybe it was one of you guys that said it, but it's defaulting back to the veterans when things aren't going well. When things are going well, you get minutes. When they're not, you throw the veterans back in. And I could see that being a situation that he faces throughout the year as they're looking to get results in their first 4 or 5 games of the season. They might go with guys that they know that might not have the upside that Ricardo Pepi has, but have the experience to try to get them points to stay in the league or get good positioning from the start. So big shoes to fill. We'll see if he does it.
Well, if you want to watch Ricardo Pepi, his team, Augsburg, takes on Freiburg on Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time as kickoff on ESPN+. We'll give you any of those times that you want. Now, if you're listening to us live or watching us live on the YouTubes, hit us up in the comments as to which player you think in the U.S. men's national team player pool has the biggest.
Jim, give us yours.
I'm going to. And hit us up on Twitter, ISWT Pod.
Come on, Jim.
I think Ricardo Pepi, I don't want to go hitting that well one more time for you guys. He's in my top 3 for sure. Jordan Pefok, though, at Union Berlin is an interesting one for me as well. Obviously, coming off the Swiss Super League and being the Golden Boot winner for there and playing against Hertha Berlin. So they're already starting with a Berlin derby here in the Bundesliga. That's another game that kicks off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, ESPN Plus. So it's a big opportunity for him because if he can get off to a hot start, then maybe he'll quell some of the, questions around whether he's good enough to play for us or not. And I want to see him do that. So I'm curious to see if he starts, that's first, and then secondly, how he does within that start, because we need him to do multiple things. We need him to hold up the ball. We need him to get on the end. We need him to do everything. That's what we want out of our number 9. And I'm curious to see how he performs in his first ever game in the Bundesliga, by the way. He's making a switch to a new league. So I think that's important to note. We have, I want to see Eric Palmer-Brown. I thought he finished the season really strong with Troyes in Liga, and he didn't do great with his minutes for the U.S. men's national team in June friendlies against Uruguay in particular. That's a tough one to be thrown into, but it's sink or swim time for a lot of these guys, even at the club level. And I'm very curious to see how he starts with Troyes and if he starts in the middle of the back like he did before. And because I still think that center back spot is wide open. Speaking of which, Cameron Carter-Vickers is going this weekend. We have Chris Richards, who will be going today against Arsenal. I don't know if he's going to start. And I think it'd be really interesting if Chris Richards did, because he just signed 8 or 9 days ago. And for him to make a big jump to a new league with a Crystal Palace team that was the 7th best defense in the Premier League, and those center backs.
No way, though. There's just no way. Unless there's an injury or something, there's just no way you start him over the center back pairing that they kept from last year that are young and have the experience, and you're playing against Arsenal as an opener. I hope I'm wrong. I
hope I'm wrong too. And then there's an interesting one for me, and I think this is the one that maybe we should care about the most. I mean, Christian Pulisic, I guess, is in there because we just don't know his future with Chelsea, and we can get into all these other guys. But Gio Reyna. Now, you have Borussia Dortmund taking on Bayer Leverkusen, which is a hell of a game to start the season, by the way. The game's going to be on ABC on Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Make some time for that. But Gio Reyna's only played 45 minutes, or he started the last game in 45 minutes. I don't know if he's going to start, but their new but old manager, Edin Terzic, who was an interim for a while, now he's the full-time guy, has come out and said publicly he's going to play Gio Reyna centrally. And I think that's of note for us to pay attention to.
Massive.
One, is he starting? How does he look when he's starting? Does it look like he's trying to protect himself from all the injuries that he has? Where is he at mentally and emotionally due to his physical ailments? And then how does he look centrally? Because I think that will play a pivotal role in terms of how he lines up for the U.S. men's national team. So I just gave you guys about 18 names, but those are little storylines that I'm looking at. Charlie, I'll come back to you. I mean, of the players that I mentioned or any other ones you want to mention, I mean, there's like a long list of guys to get into here, but Gio Reyna is really interesting for me for a lot of different reasons.
Well, I think when you phrase the initial question, which was who has the most pressure on them.
Pressure is different than eyes.
Right. So that's I think it's Ricardo Pepi in terms of pressure to succeed, given what you gave us in the World Cup qualifying. But in terms of
there's rumor, by the way, of Gio Reyna being shopped around. You talk about pressure, like he's being shopped around in terms
of where?
Potential
name the teams.
I don't actually know the teams. There's actually Ian Joy who had said that there was a discussion of that, of shopping him around just because of just the injury setbacks and maybe a frustration, even though they were the ones that proclaimed they found his injury and they had solved it, of just a change of environment. But
I wouldn't put too much into that. What I would say for sure, though, is in terms of pressure on the individual, Gio Reyna, the pressure to stay healthy, the pressure on Christian Pulisic to get into that team. And not only just to get into that team, but to be the mainstay, to be in the starting 11 consistently. I think for Brenden Aaronson, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself because this is the Premier League. Now, you've had some moments in preseason, but that's preseason. It's a whole nother beast once the Premier League starts. So you have the pressure to, one, impress your teammates. Obviously, Jesse Marsch believes in you, but you have to win over the fans and your teammates. That's a lot of pressure to start the campaign. Same with Tyler Adams, they're in the same bucket in terms of proving themselves at that level. So you have a lot of pressure on yourself. I'd say Serginho Dest at Barcelona. That's another player. A lot of pressure on himself to get into that team.
La Liga, I should just throw out there, Serie A and La Liga start the following weekend.
Right.
But so we'll get into more Serginho Dest talk next week. I agree with you overall. Yeah.
And then Yunus Musa again to hit the ground running. He's crushed it in preseason in a central role. So now we're talking about, look at all the players moving into the central roles. Brenden Aaronson into a central role. Yunus Musa into a central role. Gio Reyna. Again, it's come World Cup time. If they're all playing, what do you do? do you have to absolutely just change the formation to fit them all in? And then you have, I think, in terms of goalkeepers, right? Zach Steffen, the pressure's just on him naturally. Even though he's playing and Matt Turner's not, you have to be playing at a high level every single game. So I think the pressure's on Steffen and Horvath to continue. You got a shutout in the first match in the championship. So continuing that. And then guys on the outside looking in, I'm looking at Daryl Dike. That's a big one. Conrad de la Fuente, he's trying to get a loan move from Marseille, I think, to Liga. So if he were to do that, or La Liga, that would be a big move for him, because he needs playing time, and he's shown he has ability and quality, but to do it consistently. Gianluca Busio, a big season ahead of him. I think Mihailovic is another player, Georgi Mihailovic with Montreal, who's really been impressive. You have Shaq Moore at Nashville, Joe Scally and George Bello, Austin Trusty, who's kind of like trying to sneak into the picture for playing in the championship and did well his first game. So those are some other names.
Heath, you want to chime in on the Charlie Davies show?
I mean, geez Louise, Charlie. I didn't know you were doing an American.
Just took all the names. He named everybody, so you can't name anybody now.
Hey, Jim kicked us off. What do you want?
Wow, gosh. I mean, I guess I only get Fulham Balogun is the only player that Charlie didn't mention. So, who I am excited about, only because of the fact that he hasn't declared. He's only coming off of, I think it was, where was he, at Middlesbrough or something like that, right? On loan last year, was it Middlesbrough? And played well, scored a few goals in the championship, and now is going to, is it Reams, Charlie? Is that how it was pronounced? Reams?
Yeah.
Reams. Which he's 21, and I think 21 is still plenty young, but it's not young in the sense of the quality that I've seen him have in the reserve matches that I saw him play and the few times that he made an appearance for the first team at Arsenal. So he's one that I'm interested to see, where is he going to find his feet as a professional? Is this the place? Is he going to have a breakout year? And we're seeing that again with what's his name going to Rangers from Bayern Munich. These players need to establish as young professionals. And so for me, Balogun is one where maybe in the next 6 months you could see some conversations being had. Again, I think it might be too late if he wanted to play for the national team to get into the World Cup. But if he has a blinder of a season, who knows?
Yeah, Balogun is playing for Reims against Marseille this particular weekend. That game is on Sunday, and it will be on BN Sports, 2:45 p.m. kickoff Eastern time. Now, Conrad de la Fuente plays for Marseille, but apparently he's rumored to be going back on loan to La Liga. Obviously came from Barcelona to Marseille, and now we might be heading back with Real Valladolid. And I think that might be a good move for him to go back to a league that maybe he had more success and feels more comfortable. So keep an eye out for Conrad de la Fuente, another player that's out on the fringes. It's interesting for me how this is going to go. I actually want to talk about Leeds, because there's a couple interesting components to this particular one. Brenden Aaronson, as you mentioned, playing centrally for Leeds, picking up the ball in those areas and what that means for the national team and his role moving forward. Tyler Adams, most likely starting at a 6-6 against Wolves with Mark Roca, who came over from Bayern Munich. So I think all four of the 5 new signings for Leeds. Sinisterra is going to be out with an injury, and Rasmus Christensen should be the right back. So you have Roca, Adams, and then Aaronson in midfield, and then or maybe a little bit out wide, but tucking in centrally, and then Christensen at the right back position, who also played at RB Salzburg with Aaronson. So I'm curious to see what Jesse Marsch does against
the Leeds podcast, Jimmy? Is this a Leeds podcast?
No, but I wanted to get into it. I thought
so too, Heath. I was curious.
All right. I'm just giving some context so people know what's what. But Wolves had the best defense in the Premier League last season outside of the top 4. And I feel like that's going to be a great exercise for Aaronson and Patrick Bamford and everybody around him. How are they going to break down a very organized team under Bruno Lage, the manager of Wolves? And then conversely, how do they slow Wolves down, who did have trouble scoring goals, but Leeds shipped 79 goals, second worst in the Premier League last season. So I'm very curious to see what version of Jesse Marsch, now that he's had time to get fingerprints all over this team with the summer, are going to do. So that game, Leeds versus Wolves, is happening. I'm watching that one for sure. And that's really my next question to both of you. And Charlie, I'll come to you first. Let's take out the pressure. Let's take out like the most eyes, which one are you most just excited to watch? Which game or players are you excited to watch? Leeds versus Wolves kicks off at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Peacock on Saturday. Go ahead, Charlie.
You know, I've always been an Arsenal fan, but Crystal Palace Arsenal is not the game I'm looking forward to. I would say if I had to pick one, it's the Leeds United Wolves game, just because of all the Americans that are involved in that game. So for me, that stands out of the Premier League games.
Okay. All right, that's a good one. How about you, Heath? Any player like one that you want to watch? You have I know Ricardo Pepi's out there because you've been hyping him up from the very beginning, but
yeah, it's more my reputation that's on the line than anything. Like it's like when you just keep on doubling down on the bets, because eventually I'm going to break even here but I need him to deliver. But I mean, when I'm thinking about this weekend, it's tough to say because I think Joe Scally is again probably going to play with Stefan Lehner back a bit part role this season, so I'm not sure if there's a big moment for him.
I got a Joe Scally card, by the way.
Did you? Yeah, so did I. Maybe they're more common than we think, but
that's a good one.
It's man, it's just so I keep going back to probably Leeds just because there's so many implications there. The with Jesse Marsch, with obviously the two Americans in there, and just the importance of those guys establishing, because it's a weird dynamic, right? And I don't want there to be some sort of dynamic shift between them that we're going to find one of them buried because of the pressures of the media, who's going to absolutely crush Jesse Marsch if he starts two Americans and they get battered in one of their first few games. Kind of what comes with that. So, I'm
actually surprised. I mean, Everton versus Chelsea is interesting because Christian Pulisic, notably, there's a person I follow on Twitter who went to the Chelsea Superstore, and there's no promotional stuff around Christian Pulisic at all, which is an interesting choice. And I know that those choices I know those choices are made months in advance, right? They got to get all that stuff printed and up and ready to go. But it's almost like they felt like he wasn't going to be around this upcoming season.
Superstore is where, in London?
It's connected to Stamford Bridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. It's just interesting.
If it was the U.S. Superstore,
read it. I don't know. Yes, but it's just interesting that there wasn't any hype. It felt like there had been some hype around him, obviously, prior to that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's clear. He's not the guy. I mean, Raheem Sterling, I'm sure there's a bunch of things around him. Kai Havertz, Mason Mount. Those are the guys that they are promoting.
Dude, he wears the number 10 shirt, Charlie. You
I know.
Promote the number 10.
That's my point. He hasn't been respected. We all think he should be playing every week. And when he has shown that he's at his best and he's fit, he's clearly their best attacking player. He has the most influence. However, it hasn't been consistent. A lot of the times it comes down to injury, or he's the first scapegoat if things aren't going well. So yeah, I don't think he necessarily gets the credit he deserves with that club.
Okay.
So that's not a surprise to me.
No. And I guess let's go down this route first, and then we'll get into Fulham versus Liverpool, because what a welcome to the Premier League for Anthony Robinson. I think Tim Ream's going to get the start in this one too, because Liverpool usually pretty good in the first game of the season. Well, for most games of the season, let's be honest. But let's finish this Pulisic conversation, because it's interesting, Heath. What does he do? Because the transfer window is still open, and he has a couple weeks left before anything has to be officially decided. If he's not playing in this first few weeks, would you encourage him, as his dad on Twitter, to leave? Or do you feel like I gotta just lock in and stay in here? It's gonna be harder to adjust somewhere else and learn a new system and play in a new league or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, again, you go back to it, and on paper that would be the right thing to do, but there's a much bigger equation because of how much they spent on him and the value that they think they can get out of him. If you can get 30 games out of him as one of your depth players, phenomenal. If you're not going to get the ROI on a transfer out, you're going to have to eat some costs. Now, Chelsea have notoriously eaten costs over the years for a lot of players that they brought in through their loan systems and things like that. Matt Miazga being one that they're just going to have to eat, which it wasn't too much money. But yeah, I think in a perfect world, you've got to move on. But we've talked about this a number of times of where's the right club for him, who can afford him, what's the right situation for him to fit into and settle into. I do think Pulisic is ready for a new challenge where he comes in as the starter and it's his spot to lose, but there's competition within the team. I think that would be great for him, as opposed to this situation where I felt this in my career, not at a Chelsea, but I felt it where I feel no matter what I do, like it's the Balotelli kind of why always me. Like I'm sort of no matter what I do, it doesn't matter. I could have my best performance ever. I'm not going to start the next weekend, and I feel like he's probably broken that barrier enough times to where he feels like the cards are against him. So how is he ever going to get the most out of himself in that situation?
Okay, let's play a speculation game because I love these. Why wouldn't we do these? So if you're watching live on YouTube, hit us up with your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening to this later on, hit us up on Twitter with ISWT Pod. I want your opinions. Charlie, I'm going to come to you first. You're on the hot of the hottest seats right now. Let's play out 3+ months until the World Cup starts. Brenden Aaronson's absolutely tearing it up for Leeds. Christian Pulisic's not playing much for Chelsea. First game against Wales at the World Cup. Do you start Brenden Aaronson over Christian Pulisic and bring Pulisic off the bench like Thomas Tuchel had been doing the rest of the season? Do you have the balls?
I would do that.
The courage.
Yes, I would do that. And
Woo!
and I am one of the biggest fans of Christian Pulisic.
You think you are?
I'm realistic here. I've been in that situation. If you're not playing, your confidence is low. Your fitness is low. You cannot go from not playing at all to playing in a World Cup. It doesn't work like that. You need to have confidence. You need to be sharp. You are going to be catching up as you're going through World Cup camp. You're just not putting yourself in the best position to have success. Now, coming off the bench, you could be a game changer. So if Brenden Aaronson is doing it and he's playing every week in the Premier League, he deserves to be on the field. So if you had to move somebody and everyone else is unmovable because of their form, whether that is Gio Reyna, whether that is Yunus Musa and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, if everything is set and the striker position set, Jesus Ferreira or Ricardo Pepi, whoever is killing it, and Christian Pulisic is not playing, then he comes off. That's just how it goes. I would be able to. It's easy for me to say that sitting here, but I would assume you both, being players, would make the same move.
I would most likely make the same move, unless there were. I guess the only caveat is unless Pulisic had been doing really well and looking really sharp in his super sub appearances with Chelsea.
Oh, now Heath, now he's going to start throwing in all these other things. But he comes in off the bench and does all these step overs.
And he's smiling every day, Charlie. He's smiling. You can see that he feels good.
He never smiles. He smiles sometimes when he's.
Sometimes you get that feeling, Charlie, where you just look at somebody, that they've got it in them.
Listen,
maybe they're not playing.
Oh, come on. We've had plenty of coaches, whether for our national team system or we've heard around the world that they've got that gut feeling that this guy's really going to show up and play. I'm just saying that would be maybe the one narrative that could give a hook into Greg Berhalter. But ultimately, yes, Charlie, I agree with you. Heath, where are you on this? If it does play out this way, the crazy sad part about this is it could play out this way. I mean, it'd be awesome for Brenden Aaronson. I want him, obviously, and I want Pulisic to play as well and kick and kill it, of course. But this is a real possibility. So I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Charlie on this, which is it's a tough thing to say.
Agreeing with Charlie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just tough to agree with Charlie just because I know that what that'll do to his ego and where we have to go from here. But no, I mean, it's a tough thing to say because it is a real possibility, right? And it is something that we could potentially be facing. But come World Cup time, we need players that are confident and informed. But Brenden Aaronson's going to have a ton of challenges, right? Like in the coming 2 months of whether or not he starts. And that's going to be judged. I don't know. Maybe Jesse Marshall will be happy enough with Brenden Aaronson being owning all these stat lines that are beyond XG, right? That aren't just assists and goals that you see on a stat sheet, but are about chances created and balls won in high areas and all the things that he actually led most players in Europe, or a lot of players. He was at the top of those lists. But to be a top Premier League player for a club that might be fighting, not top Premier League player, but for a top player in a club that might be fighting relegation all year, could be a very different look for Brenden Aaronson than perhaps we would have seen him when he was controlling the game and controlling the ball, playing Champions League for Salzburg.
Yeah, Salzburg. I just want to run through Leeds' first 8 game. Pretty manageable, I would say. I'm not gonna say easy. That's the kiss of death. They got Wolves at home. They go away to Southampton. Home to Chelsea is going to be an interesting one in game 3, match day 3. Away to Brighton. Home to Everton. away to Brentford, home to Nottingham Forest, and then away to United, Villa. It gets a little bit harder.
But that's
after that. But
that's
a
a
manageable.
good way to ease yourself into the Premier League.
Not only for Jesse Marsch, but also as it pertains to Brenden Aaronson in particular, and of course Tyler Adams. So yeah, I think Jesse Marsch could be definitely going to be judged on these first 7 or 8 games, as well as the American players there. Now let's talk a little bit of Fulham versus Liverpool before we
go there, though, Jimmy.
Yeah.
How much is Leeds paying you for this podcast?
No way. My positivity just overflows. There's so many guys there.
Yeah, isn't there a strong U.S. investment from Leeds? Isn't there like eventually what's the American ownership group behind Leeds that's like buying more and more equity? And how did you get into that group, Jimmy?
Yeah, well, I think it's the 49ers, and I can't confirm or deny any.
Oh wow, Bay Area guy. Huh?
Listen. Dave says I'm a big Leeds fan all of a sudden. 2 things for you. 1, usually we only have 1 American at a particular club. We've got 3, so I've got 3 times the excitement for this particular club. That's 1. Second, if you go back to my league preview that I dropped on my YouTube channel, shameless plug alert, I have Leeds finishing in 12th. So, pipe down in there, okay? Pipe down, Dave, okay? All right, I got you. I see you. And I'm still going to be realistic, but those first 8 games I think are pretty manageable. Now let's talk about Fulham versus Liverpool, because as much as Tim Ream, 34-year-old, he's had a couple times. I think they've had 5 straight years of going up and going down. They're like the number 1 yo-yo club in Premier League, or at least recent Premier League history. And it doesn't look good for them to stay up this time. So it's going to be 6 straight years of going up and going down. But Tim Ream aside, let's talk about Anthony Robinson, because he is going to be going up against Mo Salah in this particular game. And I want to see how he does. Not only in terms of how he defends 1v1, which I think we could say isn't the best at times. And it's not because he can't do it. My thing about defending is it's just a willingness and a desire to want to do it. And he's going to have to be up for it in this regard. And then obviously his discipline of when to go forward and when to drop off. They scored 106 goals, Fulham, in the championship last year. The last time they're in the Premier League, they only scored 27. And Nottingham Forest killed it. Not Nottingham Forest. Norwich City killed it in the championship the year before. They got 97 points. Fulham got 90. Then Norwich had a terrible season last year. So the jump is not going to be easy, but I'm very curious to see how Anthony Robinson plays in particular. Charlie, anything from this game? I mean, what if Tim Ream kills it? Let's go speculation.
This is his 12th. Would you bring him in? This is his 12th year in England, and his 4th. It's weird to say his 4th stint in the Premier League.
Who's this? Tim Ream.
Tim Ream. Yeah,
he's been in England for 12 years. That's crazy.
12 years. Yeah,
good for him.
Incredible career for Tim Ream, and he's a good person. So I want to see him succeed. But let's be realistic at in the same breath. This is going to be a tough test for Fulham. Liverpool are coming and they have weapons across. Let alone the front line, the whole team. So in terms of an early test for Anthony Robinson and Tim Ream, yeah, this is as tough as it gets. It really doesn't get more difficult. So I think for us, it's just watching how Anthony Robinson reacts, how he anticipates the movement of Mo Salah. He's an athletic freak, Anthony Robinson.
Yeah,
but
cheat forward, Charlie. Cheat forward. That's it. The best way to not get exposed is to just be high and wide all the time. You know what I mean? Allow those double pivots to come on over. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're just tracking back.
Just let Tim Ream be isolated with Darwin Nunez and anybody else.
You can't spin me if I'm having to chase you down every time because somebody lost the ball on my team and I was in a really good spot high up the field. You know?
Yeah, and then you're down 4-0, and it's just like, hey. It's not me.
There's a good shout from Christopher Walken. Shout out to his continued support for the podcast. He says we might have a major blind spot for Tim Ream. What if he starts playing really, really well and we just need it for 3 games in the World Cup? Heath, is that something that you would consider if Tim Ream just really brings that steadiness, which is what we probably need from a defensive perspective anyway? Or do you think that it's passive at this point? And honestly, this goes for John Brooks, but John Brooks needs to sign for a team before we can have that conversation.
Yeah, I would take John Brooks 1,000 times over Tim Ream at this point. Tim Ream was actually the John Brooks before the John Brooks in terms of exactly playing regularly, right, playing consistently, but no longer what was deemed to be at the international speed or capable of playing in an international system, speed of play, that sort of thing. Because Tim Ream, unbelievable passer of the ball, like fantastic, always has been, very, very good on the ball, but he lacks that speed. He lacks that some of that stuff. Charlie's now taking a phone call and he's gonna have to run. But yeah, like literally, Tim Ream, love him. Like Charlie said, fantastic guy. He's had an unbelievable career, and to grind it out the way that he has is amazing. But
I'm sorry, guys. The plane is leaving, and I gotta go.
right.
Of course.
That's fine.
Charlie Davies,
All right.
everybody. Got to get on his private
Bruce
jet.
Reyes said, "It's time, or we're leaving you."
Charlie.
All right. So
All right,
Chuck
guys.
Wagon is out. See you later, Chuck Wagon. He's apparently taking his private jet to his yacht, which must be nice.
Well, he's going into Orlando, so he keeps the yacht, I think, in Miami. But fly into Orlando, one of those private terminals. But
why not?
But yeah, but with Tim Ream, I don't see there being a shout. I think maybe 2 years ago he was still sort of flirting on the edge, and I think the team's just moved on from him, which is always funny because he's been one of the few guys that for 10, 12 years now has consistently played in the championship or the Premier League. Like I said, this will be his 4th season in the Premier League, but it's consistently played at a high level. And Fulham is not a small club. Bolton is not a small club when they were in the championship as well. Those are like legitimate clubs. It's not like you're talking about some team that came up from League One and you're trying to survive in championship. These are championship teams fighting to get into the Premier League every year. And there's a real pressure and quality to his game. I just don't see it being worthwhile more now than it was before to come back into the national team.
Yeah, I guess the proof is in the pudding, as they say. If he goes out there and kills it, it's going to be hard not to at least have him in the conversation. Tim Ream played a lot of games and started a lot of games in the championship
killed it last year.
season.
But like, what's the difference?
I know.
That's where he had the chance to kill it, though.
The Premier League is the difference because every time he's taken that step in particular, it hasn't necessarily worked out well for him. So we're just going to have to wait and see. I have to wait and see on a lot of these guys. It's getting into the sink or swim time. We have more games to break down, but we're going to take our first and only break of In Soccer We Trust, so do not go anywhere.
Now that you've seen them do the universe, it's time for them to do a new series.
David, what are you doing?
Nothing.
This is gonna be cool. Well, we just came here to break stuff.
Fire.
Hey, what are you doing?
Beavis and Butthead are back with an all-new series, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust. I'm Jimmy Cream Cheese Conrad alongside Hollywood Heath Pearce. Unfortunately, Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies legitimately had to leave to go catch a flight on his private jet. I don't know if it's his private jet or not, but he's definitely doing something special with his family. We hope he has a good time. We got a lot of games to watch, and we have a couple more to preview, Heath. And I actually want to get into the MLS side of things. And I wish he was here to speak about Brenden Vazquez, because apparently Chivas Guadalajara is interested in getting Brenden Vazquez, but went on Transfer Market, the website, saw that he was only valued for $550K. They were willing to do that. And Cincinnati's like $5 million. And they were like, what are you talking about? $5 million. Transfer Market says $550K. That's insane that you'd have a professional club looking at Transfer Market, a website, to get valuations on players. I feel like there's got to be some other system behind the scenes that's going to give you a little bit better value or better understanding of what players value, especially in MLS moving forward. But there's one player in particular that really stood out for me. We hadn't had a chance we've had guests on recently, and shout out to Steve Cherundolo for coming on again yesterday for us, LAFC coach. But Aaron Long really stood out for me recently because they played the Colorado Rapids at home. He scored in this game. He's the captain of the Red Bulls. He's got a very young team on his hands. And we saw it against Austin FC not too long ago either. And when they played in the Open Cup, they have shipped a lot of goals. I believe they gave up 4 to Austin FC. Then they gave up 5 to Orlando. And they just gave up 5 to Colorado at home, and he's the captain. And that kind of troubles me a little bit as a former center back, Heath, because I know he's got a young team around him, and that's one of their strengths, but also can be as a weakness. They do high press a lot, but it's his job to keep shit together, man, to keep organized and put people in good spots to put out fires before they start. And when you're giving up this many goals in consecutive games, it's not just on you, but because you're wearing the captain's armband, because of the position you have in the field, you got to lock that up. That's your job, is to worry more than just about yourself. Now, I'm excited he scored. I'm excited he looks like he's getting back to full health. And I'm coming in hard at him right here, but I have expectations. I don't, just because you have talent, if you can't organize your back line, I wouldn't play you in a World Cup, because that is going to carry over. It really will carry over. And yes, maybe that's easier. And I'd said this before, Heath, where sometimes it's easier to play for the national team because everybody's so good at their job. You really only have to worry about yourself. Sure, you can say a couple things, but guys are so intuitive and their IQ for the game is so high, you don't have to hold as many hands as you do at the club level, especially when you have a young team. But I'm not putting this all on him. It's not, but I think there's an element of it that he has to solve. So his game this particular weekend against a DC United team who just signed Christian Benteke, by the way. I don't know how much that's going to help him, but we can hope, fingers crossed, and hope that they can get it figured out. And that's obviously a good team to try to get it figured out. Anyway, that was a Jimmy Conrad podcast. Let's take it over.
No, look, I remember going back to a moment in my career that actually made it to where I ended up retiring and going to work with you at Kick TV, Jimmy. Was I was at Gothenburg in Sweden and got in there right preseason, playing really well. And then the season started. And I remember setting these goals. I had a great conversation with Jurgen Klinsmann about like, hey, I'm going back to Europe. I'm going for a try. I'm going to make a run of this, right? And this will make sense in a second. But what I went through during that period wasn't whether or not I could play at Gothenburg, who were a great team, a lot of good young players. It was realizing that I could no longer do the things that I knew I needed to do to get back to the national team level. Now, whether you get called up or not, that's different. But because I had gone through injuries, my hip surgery and things like that, I knew physically I was at a point where I had to actively communicate my brain to my body to do things that would need to be done to play at a higher level. Now, you can get away with that at I think at times in MLS, and you can get away with that and stuff, but not at the national team level, right? And so the hesitation to make decisions when you're not in the best of form or you don't fully trust your body is the difference as a defender of making plays, which you're paid to do. That's your job, is to just constantly make plays, to organize, make the game around you, but keep your team in games. And it seems like there's still that piece missing from him, is that true confidence of being fully unlocked, right? If you watch him, he's got the speed to recover. He's got the ability to make plays, but does he have that? Is his brain connected with his body and the confidence at a point where he can, without thinking, make the plays that need to be made? Because that at the international level ends in a goal. Maybe MLS, yeah, okay, you're getting scored on a bunch right now, but you're playing like any sort of league. You maybe get away with one or two. They don't finish the chances, or a mistake that happens, or whatever. You stay in games. But at the international level, if you have any of that hesitance, and it was a realization to me that I was like, okay, my goal was to get back to the national team. I've realized I cannot do that. My body, mind, everything was just like not working together anymore that could get me mentally to that level, that I feel like that part is still missing with him. And then you add that, Jimmy, to the fact that his team is giving up a lot of goals. Now, you've been in games, Jimmy, where your team ships 3 goals or ships 4 goals, and you're like, man, I literally thought I had a pretty good game. How has this happened, right? It's a set piece. It's a corner kick. It's a in the run of play and a counter attack, or a bad turnover from your other center back leads to a goal. Like there are those outlier situations that happen where you're like, man, I'm going to look really bad here, but I don't remember that really being the case. But when it happens over and over again, that's no longer an outlier, right? It's no longer this thing that happened in an isolated situation. It's a number of those things that there's just no way of avoiding, that you're being involved in. One, is the captain, and 2, organizing that to prevent those things from happening.
Okay, I just want to make a bit of an amendment here against the game, or Austin FC. The game ended 4-3 in favor of the Red Bulls, but he went off at halftime when they were up 2-1. Outside of that, though, he played the 90 minutes in the 5-1 loss to Orlando City. They were up 1-0. It's another thing about holding leads. Also against Colorado Rapids in the last game, he played all 90 minutes, and they were up 2-0. Then they were up 3-1, and they ended up losing 5-4. And there's still an element of, okay, to your point, I might have played well, but I'm not raising the game of the guy around me. And I think that's a really important quality and attribute for a center back or any leader, right? It's not just him as a center back, also as captain. This is now somewhat becoming a theme for this particular club, who clearly have the talent. So what are they missing? What are they lacking? And so, yes, am I holding him to a higher standard? I think we have to, because we're thinking about this guy starting for us at the World Cup. And Greg Berhalter should be looking at him this critically as well. That's what I hope the expectation is that there is, and we know that he's fond of Aaron Long. We all want to see him come back and play well, but these are the intangibles that I think are going to determine the fine margins at the highest levels. Because Heath, you and I both know, you play against the best teams at the World Cup, right? You play them in big games. It's the fine margins that ultimately separate whether you win or lose, or get the draw when maybe you should have won. So these things need to be sorted out. And so that gives me a little bit of worry. And I just wanted to throw him out there as someone that I'm paying attention to, because if
It
we're
sounds
really
like you want to
considering
throw him right out there.
Nah,
into
I'm
the
not
middle
throwing.
of the
No,
freeway,
not out of
Jimmy.
the player pool. I'm just using him as an example of, just because maybe there are not as many eyes on MLS doesn't mean that you can't be held to a higher standard. All right.
No, I
there's
fully
also
agree with you. I fully agree with you there.
the Timbers versus Dallas. You got Jesus Ferreira, Paul Arriola, Sebastian Lletget just got traded from New England Revolution to Dallas. He requested the move, and Bruce Arena allowed it to happen. Eric Williamson is another one who I think is a possibility, assuming like a Kellen Acosta or whatever gets hurt. So he needs to be sharp, but the outside chance that he can make it happen. Still bummed that he got hurt when he had a pretty good Gold Cup for us last summer. Let's go over to Scotland really quick, because you have Malik Tillman and James Sands hopefully getting the start for Rangers against Kilmarnock. That game is on at 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. It's not on TV that I can find. We got Ethan Horvath and Zach Steffen both playing in the championship, also at 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. Burnley Luton Town with Horvath will be on ESPN+. Zach Steffen one will be not. That's QPR versus Middlesbrough. Mark McKenzie, I want to get your thoughts on him taking Genk taking on Eupen, I think it's pronounced, in Belgium. And Gio Reyna, we already discussed. Let's see. There was one more that I wanted to. Oh, yeah, you got Cameron Carter-Vickers. So Cameron Carter-Vickers, Celtic going away to play Ross County. That game is also at 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. No TV that I can find. Timo Weah, though. We haven't talked about Timo Weah. Obviously, finished the season red hot in Liga for Lille last year. Now, 2 seasons ago, they won the title. Last season, they were, 31 points off the top or something crazy. I mean, they were way behind the winners, PSG. They really struggled and finished middle of the table. But Tim Weah finished very, very strong. He had 3 goals and an assist in his last, 5 or 6 games. So I want to see how he does against Auxerre. That's on BN Sports on Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern. So Timo Weah is one that we need to keep an eye on. Got Busio and Tanner Tessman playing for Venezia in the Coppa Italia versus Ascoli. That's on at 11:45 a.m. Eastern on Sunday. And then Daryl Dike, he's our only Monday U.S. men's national team representative. He's taking on Watford with West Brom. That game will be on at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus on Monday. So some big games here. Anybody else kind of stand out here on the, I'd say the fringes, but any of these other players that we haven't discussed yet?
I'm just waiting for the lineups to get confirmed for today's.
I want to, just see if Chris Richards starts.
Tell me if Chris Richards.
Just refresh.
Refresh. Just we're gonna keep running this show for another at least 14 minutes to make sure that we can get that update in. But no, when I'm thinking about this weekend, a lot of MLS guys I think are really important. Just a kickoff to the season in Europe will give us some indicators, right? You've now gone through an entire preseason when we talk about Ricardo Pepi. Talk about Joe Scally, talk about Gio Reyna from the Bundesliga standpoint. Timo Weah, though, is one that I think is a great talking point because of the fact that he is going to have to increase his output in terms of goals and assists if he wants to be a starting winger for a club the size of Lille in France. Now, they're not a massive club, but they've had an incredible run over the last few years, kind of phasing or fading out, lost their coach after winning the championship, and then sort of last year settling into more what I think is a more realistic role after being in the Champions League. But what I think it's really important is that we've got guys like Brenden Aaronson to Timo Weah. Brenden Aaronson can get away with a lot more because of the intangibles of his game, right? Again, the pressing, the balls won in high positions that lead to goals, initiating attacks, certain things like that you can measure if you're a coach internally. But for Timo Weah, he's such an out-and-out winger that there's got to be a final product. Now, I could put it on the goal line for you, Jimmy, and you don't finish it. That's not my fault. And you're going to be able to see that. I know if I put it on your head, you got a chance, but on your foot, maybe not, Jimmy,
That's fair.
But
I've missed a few sitters in my career. I'm not going to lie.
Everybody has. And so it's not always black and white, but I do want to see an increased product just in measurable stats from him this year, right? I think he was red hot at the end of the year, but he scored his first goal of the season.
Yes.
I don't know,
it took him like 9
4
months.
weeks. Yeah, 4 weeks left in the season. And to be able to see that come together and something more of a complete package for a striker that has so much potential to him that we've seen in the national team, whether that's the ball to Christian Pulisic for a goal, the goal that he scored against Jamaica. We've seen that he has the ability to have that final product at a very world-class or world-class adjacent or potential level. I want to see that come through over a season where maybe you're getting him in the 5 to 10 goals, 5 to 10 assists world. If you can have, 10 to 15 goal assists combined. I think it's a really, really great stepping stone for him, and one that we can kind of look at him as a much more measurable winger in terms of the quality of play of the league and his ability to kind of what's the upside that he has in the future. So he's one that I want to have a good first week, but also establish himself as a starter for the whole season. Then prove that through things that aren't just, being a dangerous attacker on the field that creates space for other players. What more can we get out of him?
I mean, what is also
he's not coming on our podcast. He said that online. He's not doing any more podcasts. So
well, what's of interest to me with regard to Timo Weah and Lille is where he starts, because he scored his first goal when he was in the 9 spot, and he had his best goal/assist contributions playing higher up the field. And very similar to now Edin Terzic, the manager of Borussia Dortmund, saying that publicly that Gio Reyna is going to probably play more centrally. Are we going to see something similar with Timo Weah, where he starts to get away from being an out-and-out winger, which is where I think we have him slotted to start at this particular moment, and maybe moving into a 9 spot, or maybe they play 2 up top as they have done before with Burak Yilmaz as his strike partner. So lots to look after. I mean, that's why this first weekend is super exciting. I hope that everybody listening and watching makes some time, and maybe you can be our correspondents and report back to us on Monday's podcast for In Soccer We Trust. We'll go live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern to get everybody's thoughts on how everybody did. A little good weekend, bad weekend for
good weekend.
We Trust. Yeah, that's our Kick TV shout out for everybody. There is one more game happening with an American we haven't talked about yet, and that's happening today. Eintracht Frankfurt, who are the reigning Europa League winners, so they finished 11th in Bundesliga last season, taking on Bayern Munich today. Now, from a Canadian perspective, good to see Alphonso Davies getting the start. So it'll be very interesting to see how he plays, especially because Sadio Mane is also starting up top, and how they're going to look to combine and where Alphonso Davies is going to set up. If he's going to be a wing back or what that looks like. But Timothy Chandler, a former U.S. international who I have that card as well. Yeah. We're going to get into our cards and our final thoughts here. But Timmy Chandler, though older, has a lot of experience, and he plays for Eintracht, not starting today, but did sign a contract extension that should keep him at the club until he retires. So congratulations to him on that. Obviously, he's had a very, very solid career, and we probably don't talk about him enough. Now, I feel like he falls in the Tim Ream camp. We haven't seen him in a long time. I don't think he's going to get into the player pool unless he blows up, and him not starting today doesn't help that. But I just wanted to give him a shout out because he has definitely has some caps for us and played a big role for us in certain games. So I just wanted to
and he's only 32, so technically he could still be in the national team.
He could
29 caps, but just sort of hasn't been in the mix. Played a bit part role last year on the Europa League run of Frankfurt. I think 17 league matches. For him, which is good and a squad player. And again, if you had told me 10 years ago we've got a guy playing 17 matches in a Bundesliga season, that's a national team player, right?
Right.
But now I think you're able to look beyond that, knowing that you've got a potential of players. Not to say anybody should be written off, because if they have the form and the quality, it's funny, Jimmy, because I actually want to get into this soon. Of all of the dual nationals that we lost to Mexico, who could be the biggest help or support, or somebody that we could use in our national team now in terms of some of our issues of I guess Funes Mori could have played for the U.S.
Are you saying all time? Are you saying currently?
Just like currently playing now, that could be in support of our national team. You got Jonathan Gonzalez, who's a center back. We're looking at Julian Araujo, could be depth on a right back position when we're talking about Serginho Dest, because we don't currently have. We have DeAndre Yedlin, but a younger player in Araujo. Cannon. But like, again, is there an argument there?
I mean, Raul Jimenez would be. I would love to see Raul Jimenez as our number 9, just to see how much he would enjoy it. I think that he looks a little.
Raul Jimenez,
the number 9 for Mexico,
but he's a dual national.
Oh, he's not. But I'm just saying. Oh, I thought you meant
you're just making up a dream scenarios here. I'm trying
to do that the whole show, man. Like all this speculation.
I'm talking about our current national team, dual nationals that chose to play for Mexico, and knowing that we've got some situations in our national team where we don't have as much depth. Is there any players that you're like, yeah, that would have been nice at the moment? I'm not really seeing tons.
No, I'm not either.
Not like an instant shoe-in, like pool players, yeah, for sure.
Sure. That would provide depth and would challenge for spots, but nobody that would out and out be like, oh my God, that was such a big loss for us. that's in many ways, I feel like we've done the opposite. I mean, getting Dest, Yunus Musa, those are huge, giant W's. And I think that's also helped us attract
Efra Alvarez.
I like Alvarez. I do. I like his game a lot. And I wonder how he and where he would slot into our system where we could get the most out of him. I think sometimes the Galaxy's probably looking to do that as well. But that's a good question. And maybe we need to dedicate a whole podcast to that. But right now, like instantly thinking about this, I don't think there's any dual nationals that I'm, from a Mexican American standpoint, that I'm sad about losing. At some point that will happen. But as of right now, there's nobody I'm too sad about.
Okay.
Also, one last thing, actually, because this is big news. Matt Miazga is coming back from a center back position. He's coming back to MLS after leaving the Red Bulls to go to Chelsea and then basically be on loan until now. He's going back to FC Cincinnati. Do you think that helps him at all in the player pool? Because he has been way out.
Yeah,
And then we'll get into final thoughts because we got a lot of tops cards that we're looking at.
I was with Matt Miazga when they first brought him in to the Red Bulls first team. And it was in an off-season season. It just ended. He was training with us for like a week. And I remember thinking, like, this kid is big on the ball, and he's going to be so good. Obviously, goes on to be very good and gets the transfer to Chelsea. And then from there, has really been looking for himself. Yes, he's gotten minutes along the way, but he hasn't really – he's almost lost in the world of loans, right? Which is the major fear of going to one of the loaner clubs. So this could be a place for him to establish himself. And when you think about Walker Zimmerman, who was out and then had a revelation and is now sort of, pretty high on our list of building our lineups in terms of, not necessarily in terms of how good Walker is, but how much we need him in the national team comparative to who's available, right? Because I think it's a mix of both of those things.
Right.
So for Matt Miazga, it could be a huge opportunity to just galvanize his career. However, he's missed a decent amount of time of development. Would love to see him come in, take over, and get another look if it's warranted. But would have loved to see him be more successful.
He's only 27.
Yeah.
And FC Cincinnati, as much as they're exciting on the attacking side of the ball, they do have a tendency of giving some goals up the other way. So Pat Noonan looking to solidify. Yeah, it's good. It's an interesting signing. I think it's a win-win for both parties here. FC Cincinnati adds some quality and some MLS experience, and obviously a player that's been around and seen some things and should, in theory, come back a more well-rounded player. So we'll see how that works out for him. And he's got the chance to kind of resurrect his career in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there for 6 years, I guess, in Europe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, somewhere around 6, maybe 7 years. And he's got over 100 games, not a ton of games for that amount of time. But when he was on Vitesse, he had a consistent run of form. Reading, he had a consistent run of form. Anderlecht, consistent run of form. Alaves, not so much. But this is an opportunity. He's still got miles left in the tank. But he has had good performances for the national team as well. He has had some good performances for the national team throughout the years. 22 caps for the national team. But yeah, something's got to give.
I mean, if I'm Matt Miazga, I'm thinking, okay, I'm 27. The next World Cup cycle, or the next time the World Cup kicks off, I'll be 31. So
it's kind of his last chance here.
This is his last chance. He had to do something. So he can't just be disappearing on Alaves' bench watching other players play. He's got to go out there and make it happen. And we'll see what he does. It feels like a bit of a Hail Mary, but F it. Why not? Why not? And see what happens with Matt Miazga at FC Cincinnati. That'd be an interesting signing, along with all the other things that are happening this weekend. So make sure you make some time to watch some U.S. men's national team players playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe, in MLS. Lots of big action in MLS as well. Now, final thoughts, Heath. We both are doing a little activation for tops on our social media stuff. This one is for today. It's around the Bundesliga. Tomorrow's International Trading Card Day, so look for something different from me then. And then we have some MLS All-Star stuff coming the following week, which that game's happening on August 10th, the same day as the UEFA Super Cup. So a lot to dive into. But I've opened up my Bundesliga box. I was really hoping to get an Alphonso Davies signed card. I didn't get that one. I got Jonas Hector. Was my
that's a good auto. I mean, it might not be worth a lot of money, but a player who's been in the Bundesliga forever it's a pretty good pull.
I'm just here for the goddamn money, Heath.
Is he at Cologne?
I don't have time to look at where I don't know. Let me see where it is. Keep going.
I'm trying to think of where Jonas Hector is, but for the cards that I pulled,
who's your best one?
So my favorite one, which is just a completely random card, is the Conrad Lamer from RB Leipzig riding on a go-kart.
Oh yeah, I have that one too.
Yeah. That one's really funny to me. But the best card that I got was this Erling Haaland, not really applicable to this show necessarily. But
here's my Jonas Hector.
Oh, nice. So
icon card. It's at Colm.
Yeah,
I got that Haaland card too. But you have a refractor on that.
I got the purple refractor
refractor
Haaland. Yeah, which is good.
Okay,
that's running about $30 online right now. So good.
I think
good
this
little
one
pull.
though. Look at this one.
Oh wow.
This refractor is crazy. I couldn't even find value on it on eBay because it's so hard to get.
Who is it?
It's Manuel Ream from Bochum.
Okay.
It's more just it's so hard to get this refractor. So I'm thinking this is like a $40 to $50 card, which means I'm not sharing it with anybody. Suck it, haters.
There you go. I mean, my favorite card though. I mean, I got a Musiala, I got a Bellingham. Like I really like the young players. That's what you really are looking for, other than like a legend auto card. But the Ricardo Pepi that I got I'm really excited about. I got one last year. His somewhere around here. Yeah, I got his FC Dallas one up here on the wall right next to Pele and Franco Baresi. Yeah, next to Franco Baresi. So like he's in esteemed company. But
did you get the Musiala refractor green? And you did.
I did not, but Musiala is one that's like any Musialas are worthwhile. We love the young players here. We're obviously in this young player era and USMNT, our young USMNT history. So
well, I'm giving away a free box of these Bundesliga cards. Okay, this Bundesliga Chrome Stadium card. So hit me up on Twitter or Instagram to see how you're entered to win. It's easy. Just like tag a friend and leave a comment, or retweet and leave a comment. But there's some amazing cards here. So really appreciate being involved with this Topps activation. Apparently, it's official now. Christian Benteke signs with DC United. Let's make that our final thought. What do you think about that move in particular? Because as much as I appreciate Wayne Rooney coming back, he's got Ravel Morrison, and now he's got Christian Benteke. I didn't feel like scoring goals was their big issue. I thought it was more on the defensive side, and they're not signing names to do that. What are your thoughts on Benteke to DC United?
Time will tell. That's all I got with that one. Like sometimes it feels and smells desperate, but it could work out. You know, I'm who knows? I mean, it could be a great outcome.
It could be. Or it could be an absolute dumpster fire. We've seen plenty of those in all leagues. It's not just isolated to MLS, everybody. And then I'm taking a look right now. This is my final thought. The lineups for Crystal Palace versus Arsenal. And Chris Richards is not in the starting 11. However, he is on the bench. So we'll have to wait and see how he does. They've got a lot of work today against a very good Arsenal team who have been red hot in the preseason, including Gabriel Jesus. Zinchenko and Jesus both starting. So that'll be very, very interesting to see. All right, everybody, that is it for In Soccer We Trust. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Charlie Chuck Wagon Davies, who left early because he's got bigger and more important things to do than hanging out with us, Tier, but he'll be back next week. We got 3 episodes coming for you as always. And of course, on behalf of Hollywood Heath Pearce, I'm Jimmy Conrad saying thank you for listening and watching In Soccer We Trust, and enjoy your weekend and enjoy the games. We'll see you next week. Later.